What you gonna do, brother, when Jeff Townsend Media runs wild on you?
All right, Luke, can you hear me, man?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. For some reason it's not streaming to that Kick website. I don't know. Hopefully it's still working out there. I'm just clicking buttons at this point in time, Luke, so
Yeah,
who knows really.
It's part of the whole thing. You gotta click a bunch of buttons to make anything work.
Looks like we got people joining us all across social media, so that's exciting.
Nice.
I say social media, that includes YouTube as well. Like I said before, I consider it a social media, dang it.
Yeah, definitely is.
Getting queued up here, see who all we've got. A lot of the usuals, that's good. As always, we thank you for joining us live here. Mondays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern-ish. Close. We're pretty close tonight, Luke.
Yeah, definitely are.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about our timing tonight, man. I mean, we're usually late, so I'm excited about the story we're going to share tonight. We'll go ahead and get going if you're ready, man.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll just officially kick off the stream here. All right. Welcome to another stream of Your Scary Stories. I'm Jeff Townsend. Joining me is Luke, John Daily Programmer.
Yeah, I love that username. I don't know.
It is cool. I like it. It's just your typical everyday daily programmer, right?
Well, I really like the golfer, John Daly.
Oh, yeah. He's a legend, dude.
Yeah.
He's a legend. I think we could all use a little John Daly in our life.
Yeah.
Man, we got people coming on, spamming us already.
Yeah, you gotta love spammers.
Yeah, we got spammers showing up all around. Hello, Chad Michael. Hello, Viv Games. We've got, who else do we have? We have Steve out there. Hey, Steve. There's a lot of you popping up. So, yeah, I appreciate you joining us live for another stream of Your Scary Stories. Like I said, tonight we're going to, so what we have planned for tonight, we have one story, kind of like we did back with the stairs. That's a while ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a couple months, maybe a month and a half.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe start of the new year, very end of last year.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take turns reading a story here that'll take up the duration of this episode, or it should at least. Luke, you've had a chance to read this over, so I'm sure you're excited too.
Yeah, this is a wild one.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I want to make sure. So I found the story in the No Sleep Reddit group. I actually reached out to the person that posted this, Carl B 1961. I'm going to make sure I have all of his details in the show notes, so go check it out. He has a Patreon and stuff like that. So yeah, I reached out to Carl B 1961, or I don't know if he goes by 1961 or 1961. I'm just shortening it up, Luke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would assume it's 1961.
Yeah, I did reach out to him because I read this and I was like, man, this is just awesome. And he gave me a heads up. Hey, a few people have covered it, but you're more welcome to. Of course, we'll give him the credit. And like I said, you want to check out his stuff, go to the show notes. But yeah, man. So this story, I'm just gonna. It's a small town cop horror story, right? I mean, I think that's the best way to sum up the story that we're going to be taking turns. In the context of it's a story that was wrote, of course, but we're going to approach this and discuss this as if we are putting ourselves in the shoes and the situation being entirely real. So
yeah,
that will make it fun. But yeah, like I said, this is in the No Sleep Reddit group. That's a cool Reddit group. Are you in that group, man? There's a bunch of good stuff in there.
I'm in darn near every single scary Reddit there is.
Yeah, scary, creepy, haunted. Yeah, we're in all of them. So of course you can join ours. What's ours? I don't even remember. Share your scary
stories. Share your scary stories Reddit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to start it off. So I don't remember how many sections we all have. So what we'll do is, I think I set it up to where after we are done, we take we'll take a quick break and discuss this, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, each section break.
Yeah, so it won't be like that last time where I read, then you finished it off, then we took a break. I think I set it up now where read, break, discussion, on to the next. So I'll go ahead and kick it off. Like I said, it's a small town cop horror story, and this is the start of it. Oh, I should get the music going, shouldn't I?
Oh yeah.
You can't let me, Luke, man. You can't just let me hanging like that. You gotta.
I wish I could help with that in some way.
Yeah, I don't know if you could or couldn't. I need to look into that more. I know there's like a producer role.
Yeah.
Give it a second here. Can you hear me at all?
You're a little bit quiet there. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, we just had to work through the kinks there.
Yep.
All right. I've been a small town cop for 12 years. There's one case that still scares me. Being a cop in a small town in Minnesota probably isn't the most exciting career there is, but it's not bad either. It's actually a relatively peaceful and safe line of work compared to being in law enforcement in one of the big cities like New York or LA, for instance, where the action truly is. There's only around 10,000 people in the town where I live. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by miles of open farmland, and the only real crime that ever occurs is pretty minor stuff. The occasional rowdy rednecks getting into fistfights at one of the 3 bars downtown, teenagers vandalizing, petty theft, the odd drunk driving, and a case of disorderly conduct here and there, and the rare breaking and entering, that sort of stuff, those sort of crimes. The only real serious stuff I've had to deal with is a couple cases of domestic violence and assault and battery. But even that's pretty typical, I guess, and it doesn't happen very often here. Well, that's not entirely true. There was one case that still haunts me, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I was saying, I live in a pretty peaceful little town, boring, some would even say. The kind of rural, out-of-the-way, hick farming community you've probably driven through on the highway yourself on the way to some place more interesting, without as much as a second thought or even a glance back once you... The kind of place where nothing out of the ordinary ever happens, you've probably thought. And for the most part, you'd be right. But there is one case I can't get out of my mind. One case that still makes my blood run cold whenever I think about it. One case I can't explain no matter how much I try to rationalize it to myself. What happened to the old Garrity woman 7 years ago? I'd been a police officer for 5 years when it happened in the early spring of 2014. There were only 5 cops on the entire town police force. Me, my partner Jerry, Pete, Vance, who both worked the night patrol, and then the police chief, plus Karen, an older woman who was a retired librarian and worked part-time as a dispatcher. The police department was located in the town building and consisted of 2 offices, one being the chief and the rest of us shared an office. There were only 3 jail cells in the rear of this building, and the 3 of them were never all occupied at the same time. It was an overcast, rainy afternoon in late March, early April. Me and Jerry were out in our cruiser on a routine patrol around town when Karen's voice came over the radio telling us there was a possible 1082 in progress at the Garrity house on Turner Road. For those of you who aren't in the know, a 1082 is police code for robbery, burglary. We acknowledged it to Karen and then immediately changed direction, heading to the Garrity home. I wasn't overly concerned about the call. I already had a pretty good idea who had made it. Miss Garrity was an elderly woman who lived in a rundown farmhouse on the outskirts of town. She was probably around 65 or 70 years old and had lived alone since her husband had died of a stroke 3 years prior. They had 2 adult children, but they both lived out of town and never visited her. Since her husband's death, she had developed something of a reputation of being eccentric. No, to put it nicely, I guess they would say crazy. That would be putting it not so nicely. She was shut in most of the time, rarely left her home, and had groceries delivered to her house once a week. Basically a crazy cat lady, minus the cats. The reason she was considered crazy was because she had become pretty flaky and paranoid since being widowed and had called the police department on multiple occasions for everything from hearing intruders moving around in her attic to seeing UFOs in her cornfield. There were probably at least a dozen others too. All her calls turned out to be false alarms, of course. The robberies she claimed were hiding in her the robbers she claimed who were hiding in her attic turned out to be a pair of raccoons that had just slipped in under the roof, and the UFOs were probably just jets flying overhead from the nearby National Guard base, just 50 miles west of here. Me and Jerry and Pete and Vance had all visited her home before during our respective shifts. We never got frustrated with her or gave her a hard time about it, and usually indulged her inspecting her house and property to calm her nerves. She'd relax, thank us, and we'd leave. And the process would repeat itself in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Honestly, our infrequent trips to her house were probably the only real highlight of our rather dull and unexciting job. When we told the chief about Mrs. Garrity's latest emergency, Bigfoot was sneaking around her yard, or there was a giant anaconda lurking in the basement, he would just shake his head sadly. When Vance and Pete were the ones who had to deal with her, they'd tell us all about her most recent ordeal. When me and Jerry saw them at the end of their shifts and the start of ours, they'd usually just smirk in a mean spirited way, and Pete would twirl his finger next to his temple before they left. Jerry and I just felt sorry for the old woman. It couldn't have been easy for her. A frail, nervous, lonely woman living all alone in the old crumbling house with no friends or close family. I suspected she might be getting senile, or maybe entering the early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia. We worried about her living there by herself, almost a mile from the nearest neighbor. If her health suddenly turned bad or she had an accident, she wouldn't be able to call for help. Well, there wasn't really much we could do about it. A couple of times I looked up the numbers of her daughter and son and tried calling them about possibly placing her in assisted living home or a mental health facility. But the one time I managed to reach her son, as I was explaining his mother's situation to him, he interrupted me, telling me he was too busy at the moment and would call me back, then abruptly ended the call. He never did call me back from then on. They always happened to be unavailable and never answered any of the voicemails I left for them. All right, so we just set the stage here. And I tell you what, Luke, it sounds an awful lot like where we grew up.
Yeah, the size of the town and everything. I was reading it through. I was like, this is very similar size to our neighborhood.
I like how the wording where he said that it was the type of town you'd drive through on your way to go somewhere more interesting, right? We have a lot of like towns you stop off of the interstate when you're heading to the capital or a major city. Our town's like that. And I'm getting the exact same vibes for this town in the story.
Yeah, definitely. And so I noticed that too, right? I was, oh, that's the same size town and same kind of situation, you know. I really dislike the kids of this woman in this, situation. I don't like what, leaving her all to herself. This seems crazy to me to do that to a family member. I know a lot of families are different and they do that kind of stuff. And I always thought that was strange. And I just, so like reading that part, I was like, oh man, this lady.
This cop really feels for her though.
Yeah, he does. And he's, right to do so. This lady shouldn't be by herself.
It seems like he's tried to reach out, like he explained. He's tried to help her and reach out to her kids and just people that could help her, but her kids, like you said, just won't respond or don't give it the time of day. So she's out there in the middle of nowhere, basically living in her own misery. I don't really know how to word it. Can't escape, just no support, and probably continuing to drive herself more crazy too.
Yeah.
Did I word that okay? Was that bad? Or?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. That was pretty good. The other thing that, I thought was, I don't know, it's funny, the possible Bigfoot sightings and stuff like that and UFOs. And that's like half of our stories that we talk about on here.
Somebody said raccoons in the attic can drive anyone kind of crazy though. I've had squirrels in the attic. It was pretty scary.
Yeah, well,
scary in the sense of you didn't know if they're up there chewing through cords, electrical cords.
like that one though you showed that video. That one guy thought there was a raccoon in his crawl space, and it being some dude.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you can't tell all the time.
Yeah. This seems like every community probably has somebody like like old lady Garrity here.
Yeah, definitely. There's always like someone that is a little crazy, a little eccentric, and doesn't have someone looking after them. And we could think of 2 or 3 people that we've met over the years that are kind of like that.
Oh, for sure. And all you can really do is, if you're a police officer, in your profession, you just try to be as polite as possible, and nothing you could do. You have to treat everything as if it's possibly real. I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
And be respectful, and that seems like they do. It seems like the day shift guys are possibly a little bit more caring than the night shift guys.
Yeah, seems like it. Of course, night shift is a rough shift for anyone, so
Yeah.
possibly they just don't want to deal with it.
Hey, we've set the stage here pretty well, I feel like. Just
Yeah.
to recap, small town police officer sharing a story about a lady that lives in the rural area outside the city. She's been widowed I think he said 3 years ago. Her husband had passed away,
Yeah.
and she was starting to really show signs of possible dementia, Alzheimer's or something, because she would frequently call the police with false alarms, various different things, intruders, UFOs, Bigfoots, etc. I see everybody joining as we continue on with this story. So that's to sum that up. Luke, do you have anything else on that before we jump back in?
Yeah, so they're actually on the way out there to respond to a burglary call, right? That's what she just called that in. So that's the newest thing.
Correct.
And where this goes from here is going to be interesting.
So yeah, you're picking it up as they respond to the latest call from her.
Yep.
See if we get the music going again.
Yep. All right, can you hear me?
Yep, so far so good.
All righty. Jerry and I turned onto Turner Road and drove up to Mrs. Garrity's house on the gray, rainy, late spring day, certain the old woman was just overreacting yet again to something relatively minor, and her imagination was playing tricks on her. She was waiting for us outside on her porch when we pulled to a stop. I'll never forget how she looked. It shocked me. She'd already been a thin, frail woman the other times we've been out here, but we hadn't seen her in probably a couple of months since her last false emergency. She had changed drastically since then. Now she was gaunt, almost emaciated, her cheeks hollow, and dark rings under her bloodshot, sunken eyes. Her gray hair was tangled and didn't look like it had been washed in days, maybe weeks. And the dress she was wearing was wrinkled and dirty. Her physical appearance was alarming enough, but there was also something about the way she was staring at both of us with those dark, dull eyes that seemed to look at us and through us, past us, all at once. Yeah, it reminded me of old photos I had seen of American soldiers in Vietnam. The blank, expressionless, shell-shocked look of someone who had been through more horror than any ordinary person should have to endure. Me and Jerry exchanged a shocked look, then got out and approached the old woman. "What seems to be the trouble, Mrs. Garrity?" Jerry asked, trying to keep his voice nonchalant. "There's something in my house," she told us in a flat, toneless voice. She was shaking slightly, a woman on the verge of total physical and mental exhaustion. The way she phrased it, not someone, but something, made me raise my eyebrow. "Well, you just wait here and we'll go have a look and make sure it's safe," I told her, trying not to sound too patronizing. I looked at Jerry and nodded. We both drew our pistols and stepped past Mrs. Garrity, cautiously entering the house. We did a routine sweep of the first floor, guns leveled, then headed upstairs. It only took about 5 minutes to check out the house. We had done it so many times before. We had the layout down pat. There was no sign of any intruders or evidence of a breaking and entering, but I saw plenty of other things that disturbed me deeply. For one thing, the place was a total mess. The house was already pretty decrepit, but Mrs. Garrity had still taken pride at how clean she kept it. It had always been spick and span on our earlier visits. Now, dirty dishes were stacked high in the kitchen sink. The counters were dirty, and trash and dirty laundry littered the floors. I also noticed that Mrs. Garrity's pillow and blankets were lying rumpled on the couch in the living room. The surface of the coffee table in front of it was cluttered with half-drunk cups of coffee, open containers of food, a Bible, and a rosary. It looked like she had been eating and sleeping in the living room for some time, and the room itself looked like it had been vacant. Her room itself looked like it had been vacant for quite a while. There's something in the living room that really alarmed me. Leaning in one corner was an old double-barreled shotgun that had probably belonged to her late husband. Jerry picked it up, broke it open, and found 2 spent shells in the chamber. Took one out and sniffed it. He told me the gun had been fired very recently. We also discovered something else bizarre. All the mirrors in Mrs. Garrity's house had been shattered, and every closet door had been boarded shut. The one in the front hall on the first floor had a huge hole blasted in the center of it. Smaller holes pitted the splintered wood around it. You didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to deduce that Mrs. Garrity had fired her husband's shotgun into that door. But why? What the fuck had happened here? Jerry shot me a perplexed, questioning look. I shrugged, clueless and equally bewildered. Finished with our inspection of the house, we put away our pistols and turned around to go back outside. Mrs. Garrity was standing in the room behind us, staring at us with an unnerving, blank expression. Both of us almost jumped a foot in the air, startled. Neither of us had heard her enter. Jerry regained his composure and flashed her a fake, reassuring smile. "We don't see any sign of him, Miss Garrity. He must have slipped out the back. You're safe now." She didn't relax or appear relieved like she had the countless other times we had humored her. Her face seemed to twitch, and some new look dawned in her eyes. It took me a moment to identify it. It was a look of pure, hopeless doom, mixed with terror. "No," she said in that same odd, listless, flat voice. "I'm not safe. It's still here. It's hiding. That's why you couldn't find it, and after you leave, it will come back for me." Then she began to quiver, started to cry with total despair, breaking down into hysterical sobs that racked her whole body. Jerry and me looked at each other concerned. We went to the old woman and comforted her as best we could, guiding her over to the couch and sitting her down with us on either side of her, coaxing her gently to a state of calm.
Wow. So business is about to pick up, I guess one would say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
So gunshots through their gunshots through the doors?
It was through the closet door in the hallway on the first floor. They shot. Looks like she shot both shells to that hole, and some of the pellets went off to the side and hit the trim on either side of the door.
Get people adding to it here. Broke the mirrors and put boards on the windows.
The boards on her closet door, she boarded them shut and nailed it.
Boarded her closet door shut. That is crazy.
Yeah. This is very this would be something if you were to walk in on this, doing your job as a police officer, you walk in on this scene, you would definitely be alarmed because this is not, normal behavior.
They've been there a million times.
Yeah. When I first was reading this, I was genuinely creeped out by the description of this whole thing. But I was also very concerned for this woman because, she's on her couch for a few days now because she, clearly upset with something.
Yeah.
And then scared enough that she, had her rosary, had her Bible there, and that shotgun.
That's... I guess everybody has their own what's peaceful to them. I don't really know what else to say, but I guess I'll just play this to kind of describe it.
If heaven was a pie, it would be cherry, so cool and sweet and heavy on the tongue, and everyone I loved is still alive.
I'm getting pretty good at editing those, ain't I?
Yeah.
This is crazy. So she pulls out the gun. People are saying they're too young to get these memes most of the time. That's the thing, though. Nobody gets them but us.
Yeah.
Everything I do is trolling Luke, basically.
Pretty much. You would have to have grown up with us and been in these exact conversations where these things came up for that to make any sense.
Yeah, everybody else listening, but trust me, it's great. You just have to trust me. Yeah, I just had to waste 12 seconds of your life. Back to the story, though. Is it possible at this point in time that you'd be thinking she's just completely lost her mind? Would that be like, where would your head go first? Obviously, I can't put you in this scenario exactly, but where would your head go first?
Yeah, I would probably assume that she
finally snapped.
She may be a danger to herself or others at this point. Unfortunately, and it would be a very sad realization. It would also be a very scary situation to be in because you need to make sure she doesn't have any other weapons around while you were, trying to figure out the situation and take care of it.
Other things that stuck out before we move on, it was the state of the house.
Yeah.
Messy, run down, which they said she typically would take great pride in the cleanliness of her house, even though the house, they said, itself was kind of broken down and from age, old farmhouse.
Yeah, but just a really old house.
And she had been sleeping downstairs. She'd been sleeping on the couch, you said?
Yeah, sleeping on the couch. Hadn't been in her room for several days at least, just judging by the way it looked in there.
There's got to be a reason she's not going in that room. I mean, I think that's where we pick back up here on the story. So this is getting crazy.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move back in, Luke?
No, I'm good.
See if we get
that music.
How do I sound? Good?
You sound good.
Okay, we'll go with it then. After she had herself back under control, we asked her to explain what had happened. She was quiet for a few moments, gathering her thoughts. Then she began to speak. As we listened to her story, my body temperature seemed to gradually drop, and I felt a chill taking over me. Several times I made eye contact with Jerry, and his expression was a mirror of my own, disbelief and fear. She said, "It started about a month ago. That's when I first started hearing the scratching at my closet door. A soft, slow, steady scratching that seemed to come from inside her bedroom closet at night. At first, she had assumed it was probably a mouse or some other small animal, except the scratching seemed to come from too high up to be the works of a mouse. Whenever she opened the closet door, always after scratching had ceased, there had been nothing there. Several times she started to open the closet door while the scratching was in progress to get to the bottom of it once and for all. But each time she had grasped the knob, she had been overwhelmed with a sudden, irrational sense of unease and had been unable to do it so far. The scratching sounded too deliberate, too gentle, as if something was trying to lure her into opening the closet door. To be safe, she had started locking her closet door at night. Over the next several days, the scratching had gotten louder and more intense, as if something was trying to tunnel its way through the wood. One day, she opened her closet door and found claw marks on the other side. Claw marks that were 6 feet off the ground. Claw marks that looked like they had been made by fingernails. The horror had really started for Mrs. Garrity about a week after she had first heard the scratching sounds. One night she had woke up to a voice softly calling for her, a voice that seemed to be coming from the locked closet door. She was bewildered, even more so because she recognized that voice. It belonged to Bill, her dead husband. Bill's voice had pleaded for her to open the closet door, telling her that God had sent him down to take her up to heaven where they could be together forever again and young, like they had used to be. At this point, Jerry had looked at me wide-eyed from the other side of the couch. Then what happened? I asked gently. I thought I was dreaming, Miss Garrity said. I thought it had to be a dream. Poor Bill had been gone for 3 years, and since I was having a dream, I didn't see no harm in doing what he was asking me to do. I got out of bed and went to the closet. I reached for the lock, but then I stopped. Something didn't seem right. It was Bill's voice and seemed perfectly normal, but somehow it was wrong too. The way he was talking, it wasn't like how Bill used to talk. It was like a stranger was using Bill's voice, trying to trick me into opening that closet door. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Actually, nothing she was telling us made sense, but we asked her to continue telling her story. Bill, or whoever or whatever was using his voice, had continued to beg her to unlock the closet. When she had refused, the voice had changed, becoming harsh and violent. It had angrily demanded she open the door, and when she still refused, it began to shout at her, using profanity and making obscene threats, things Bill would never have said to me while he was alive, before beginning to pound violently on the door. The voice had begun to change, no longer sounding like her late husband's. It had become deeper, distorted, until it didn't sound like human at all. In terror, she had fled her bedroom and spent the night on the couch downstairs. Eventually, the pounding and the threats had stopped. Mrs. Garrity, Jerry politely interrupted her at this point. Why didn't you call us at the police station when this happened? She was silent for a moment, then a small, bitter smile formed on her lips. I thought you'd think I was just imagining it, she told us. I know people in town think I'm crazy. I'm the crazy old lady. And have I had told you this, you wouldn't believe me because you come out here so many times and it turns out to be nothing. I thought maybe it was all in my head and I didn't want to bother you about it. Oh,
it's so creepy. The idea of this thing using her husband's voice.
It sounded like it really progressed over time. Started out just like almost like soft and gentle claw marks, like clawing or scratching the closet door. Then it progressed to screaming at her. And like you said, it was using her husband's voice, which is really weird. But as it got more angry and she didn't comply with what it was asking, it got so angry, like it's almost like it couldn't use his voice anymore, right? It just went back to whatever state this was.
Yeah. The part where she was talking about how it sounded right, but also sounded like a stranger using the voice reminds me of something that Stephen King said about what he thought would be the scariest thing that he could imagine. And that'd be going into your own home and everything being replaced with an exact copy of your stuff.
Yeah. It's like that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, The Sixth Day.
Kind of.
Except for they just stole his life.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not the same. But that's a pretty good comparison, though. And I see what they're saying because obviously she's close to her husband, people that you're close with, your friends, family, whatever. Mm-hmm. You know how they talk. Like you hear their voice, but you know the things they would say and how they would say them.
Yeah.
So I can see where this would be like tripping me out, right? Like my husband doesn't use that word, or she's probably thinking that.
Yeah.
It doesn't speak like that. I mean,
everyone has a cadence they speak in that, people won't be able to always mimic and stuff like that, but you might be able to sound the same. And so something like that would make you think twice. It's like, this doesn't sound exactly like this person.
People are commenting along here. Let's see what they say. Somebody said, a lot of people are basically saying she knew they wouldn't believe her.
Yeah.
So she at least has the ability to rationalize the perception of her vision, of her mental state.
Yeah, and then you also have to think that maybe it's not so much up to this point that she was saying, maybe some of the things she had called them in the past wasn't so much because she thought she actually saw them, but maybe she was just lonely and was trying to figure out some way to talk to somebody. And so she was just like calling in. I mean, obviously, this is a terrible idea. It never should be done. But she was maybe calling the police to get someone out there to talk to for a little bit and just check on her.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I said earlier, she literally has her groceries delivered.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have like go to the store, get that social interaction.
Yeah.
Nobody living with her either.
But she takes time to clean her house most of the time, right? And to make it so it's nice looking. And so like she probably does miss people, and that might have led her to make a lot of those phone calls.
Claw marks on the inside of the closet, 6 feet off the ground, indicating a person, right? You would scratch around your height.
Yeah, probably about
Would
like
be the thought.
yeah. This is
That
a
was-
large person. This would be a very large person, maybe a 6'5", somewhere in there.
Yeah. Yeah, 6 feet off the ground ish. Yeah, you're right. You'd probably do it at your
Like maybe
the
right
foot
around
to
here.
give at least. Yeah, yeah. That's the thought. You did mention that in the story, so I wanted to bring that up. Sure, the height was noted for a reason. This is really setting up to be interesting because they're still sitting on the couch with her and trying to process this information as it's being communicated to them. They have seen evidence of some sort of crazy thing happening.
Yeah.
Guns been fired, things have been broken.
Yeah.
The like we said before, the house is a complete mess. So from what they've seen when they did the sweep of the house, things are definitely out of ordinary.
Yeah.
Might as well pick back up there.
Yep.
Hold on, let me get
Sounds
going
good.
here.
All right. How it sound now?
You sound fine.
All right, good. Things had escalated pretty quickly from there. The pounding and threats had continued every night. She had been too scared to sleep in her bedroom and had started sleeping on the living room couch. Then one night, the pounding had begun not just on her bedroom closet, but all the closet doors in the house, all at the same time. Like there are people in all of them trying to get out of the place, she told us. But it was in the same voice in every closet, the same horrible voice. In fear, she had nailed all the closet doors shut to keep the thing, whatever it was, from coming out to get her. Then, about 2 weeks ago, something even more terrifying had happened. She had been in her bathroom and was washing her hands in the sink when she had looked up at the medicine cabinet mirror. Here she paused. "What'd you see?" Jerry asked her. "I saw it," she said in a choked whimper. "I saw its face instead of my own. It was wearing a black robe with a hood, and his face was just a grinning skull, a skull with horns. Its eyes were red, the eyes of the devil himself. I don't mean I saw it standing behind me in the mirror. It was in the mirror itself. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. It reached out of the mirror. It didn't have hands, it had claws, and tried to grab me. In horror, she had thrown a bottle of lotion at the mirror, shattering the glass. Then, to be safe, she did the same to all other mirrors in the house. "How could you stay in this house with all this happening to you?" I asked her. She shrugged sadly. "I don't have anywhere else to go. And no one will take me in. The nights were awful, but it was always better during the days. At least then I could get some sleep. It always stopped by morning and never happened during the day." She suddenly shuddered. "Until 3 days ago. Then it started happening all the time, day and night. I wasn't safe no matter what time it was. It had all come to a head late this morning. The pounding had gradually gotten more violent and forceful until all the closet doors were rattling in their frames. Mrs. Garrity knew that even with the boards nailed over them, it was only a matter of time until that thing broke through. In desperation, she began praying and reading from the Bible, which only caused the entity in the closet to laugh at her mockingly. Finally, she'd gotten out Bill's shotgun and fired it through the closet door. For a minute or so, there wasn't a sound, she told us. I started to think it was finally over. Then I saw those red eyes burning in the dark in the hole the shotgun had made. It laughed, and it said one word to me. What did it say? I asked her. Tonight, she said, and began to tremble. She lowered her head into her hands and began to sob again. Jerry and I were silent for some time, trying to absorb what she had just told us. We looked at each other, deeply troubled by her story. Neither of us actually believed it, of course, but it was obvious the poor woman was deeply disturbed. She was having some kind of nervous breakdown. Maybe her frayed grip on reality had finally snapped, or maybe old age was taking its toll on her mind. One thing was clear. It wasn't safe for her to be alone anymore, especially not here. It was not healthy for her. Hell, for all we know, maybe her paranoid delusions were the result of some dangerous form of mold that had formed in the house. Jerry and I excused ourselves for a moment and stepped outside to talk in private. We both agreed she needed help. She needed to be institutionalized, but for now, it was best she stay somewhere else. We went back in and told Mrs. Garrity that she was coming with us. She was going to spend the night in a motel and room in town, and tomorrow, Jerry added, we were going to find a priest who would come and exorcise the evil spirit that had been bothering her, getting rid of it once and for all. She broke down, this time crying in relief, and hugged me and my partner, thanking us over and over again. You're muted, sorry. I was taking a drink when you started talking.
I'm checking to make sure a dog is not destroyed the house. I said a lot to unpack there. What are your thoughts? So they're completely convinced now that she's lost her mind?
Yeah, completely. They are definitely concerned for her safety, rightly so. You know, she's fired the shotgun at her door in her house. That in of itself, very dangerous behavior. They know that she needs to be taken care of. They also know that she's probably not taking care of herself, like physically. She's probably, she hasn't washed in a couple of days at least.
She looks slim. The more slim, they said that earlier?
They said that she was very emaciated, so she had not been eating well, and she hadn't been sleeping clearly by the bags under her eyes, she's in a bad state. They know this. Clearly, there's proof of that. So at the very least, they have to, get her out of there.
There's a pretty equal divide happening right now in the chat. That's interesting. You have a lot of the viewers, listeners are saying that she has lost her mind, but there are people saying there's demons or something in the house.
Well, we've definitely have heard a bunch of other stories that have very similar, not exactly the same, but similar things happening to people throughout them. We've seen, we've read stories of, things in the shadows talking to people and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always that possibility. But, knee-jerk reaction, you look at this and you're in that situation, you assume, well, she's probably crazy, but we got to get her out of here no matter what. So it's a good thing either way, getting out of there, even if it is a demon in there.
Yeah, it sounds like she's going to get the help that she needs. Definitely one thing's for sure. She's convinced something's in there.
Yeah.
We don't know if there's something in there or not, but she's definitely convinced and has been in a very long. So let's just say she is having like an episode here.
Yeah.
She's having a really long one.
Yes. This is something that's lasting weeks at this point.
So just to recap from where we did last time, things really started to escalate as far as the entity as she's describing it, saying it actually. Earlier, it was kind of confined to this closet upstairs in her bedroom. Now she is hearing it come from the closets around the house. All the doors are shaking.
Yeah, all the closets at once.
And these were the events right before she called them, I believe.
Yes, she just before she called them, she had shot into one of the closets and saw it still on the other side, basically.
So yeah, she shot and a hole went through the door, and that's when she saw the eyes looking through the hole.
Yeah,
She said they were yellow eyes,
red eyes,
red eyes. Both are terrifying.
Yeah, they're both bad.
Got a lot of Skinwalker comments here. That's probably
Well,
it's probably because Luke talks about Skinwalkers a lot.
well, I actually thought the same thing though, right? Because
Mhm.
like the Skinwalker lores, they'll talk like someone or they'll have a very raspy, inhuman voice. And they have the horns a lot of times because they take the form of different animals, and then the glowing eyes. So yeah, a lot of it does sound Skinwalker-ish. The only thing is, this is in an area that is not known for that. I believe it is in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
Minnesota.
And so that's not necessarily a hotbed for Skinwalker activity.
You feel for her because nobody would believe her, right? At this point in time, they're really disturbed but concerned about her.
Yeah.
It's like she knew this. She tries to explain this to anybody, they're just not going to believe it.
Yeah. In fact,
5 feet nothing. Blocked my shot.
When did you first start having this dream?
It wasn't a dream. It really happened.
I love that movie.
Well, that's a good clip from it, though, right?
Yeah, and it fits. And also, they did flat out say they don't believe her. So, like, they didn't say it to her face, but
they've handled it really well for her.
Yeah. So, like, they definitely don't believe her. But yeah, they are going to give her some help. That was probably the perfect clip for that.
Yeah, she is at this point crying in relief because they have said they will take her to a motel so she can get out of there. And they even mentioned the word institutionalized. She needs help. They're going to try to make help.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, they got to get her somewhere else for that night because they have to get her somewhere else for the night because she said that the demon said tonight to her.
Yeah. Said tonight, right after she shot.
He laughed when she shot, right? This demon, this entity, she, I don't.
It was laughing at her beforehand because she was reading from the Bible.
After the shot, though, all it said was tonight.
Yeah.
So that at this point in time, she calls them there, and their investigation is going. They've made a decision to take her to a hotel, motel for the night. I'll cue back up here.
No.
Can't hear me yet?
Very good.
Okay,
That
I can
was
hear
weird.
you. All right, we'll pick the story back up here. We drove her to a cheap motel in town and checked her in. Her mental state already seemed to have improved in that short amount of time of being away from that house. She smiled and told us she couldn't wait to finally get a decent night's sleep without having to worry about that thing banging on her doors. I think mostly she was just glad she wouldn't have to be afraid anymore of that entity she was convinced was lurking in her house. We both smiled at her and said goodbye, getting in the cruiser and driving away. Our smiles faded as soon as we pulled away from the motel. We both drove in silence. Rode and drove in silence. We both liked old Miss Garrity, in spite of all the times she had made herself a nuisance to the police department with her bogus calls and her erratic behavior. We were sorry her mental state had deteriorated to such a point that she couldn't look after herself anymore. We told the chief her story when we got back. He sighed sadly and nodded, agreeing that she had to be committed somewhere. Tomorrow, him and me were going to drive out and personally visit her son and daughter and explain to them what was going on. And if they still refused to do what needed to be done, the chief would see it to himself that Mrs. Garrity got the help she needed. But we never got a chance. The last time we ever saw Mrs. Garrity was when Jerry and I left her at the motel. Around 4 a.m. early the next morning, I was awakened by an urgent phone call from the chief telling me to get over to the motel as soon as possible. He wouldn't say why over the phone, but I already had a hunch it had something to do with Mrs. Garrity. I felt an awful sense of dread as I got dressed. I wondered if maybe she had taken her own life in the motel room after we had left her. When I arrived outside the motel, my fears were confirmed when I saw crime scene tape blocking the door to Mrs. Garrity's room. The chief, along with Jerry, Pete, and Vance, were gathered outside, along with a couple cops from the state police and a pair of detectives from the city. The chief greeted me with the grave expression as I approached. He told me Miss Garrity was gone. At first, I thought he meant she was dead. Then, seeing the solemn look on his face, he clarified that she was literally gone. I looked at him confused. I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before, something that caused a ripple of fear in my heart. The chief was scared. He told me he didn't know what to make of it himself. People in the neighboring rooms had heard blood-curdling screams and sounds of violence coming from Miss Garrity's room around 2 a.m. Then it went silent. Nothing. They had called the police department. Pete and Vance were on the scene first to arrive here. They pounded on the door, but there had been no response from the inside. They had forced the door open, but when they saw what was inside, they had decided to call the chief himself. What did they find? I asked the chief. What did they find? I asked him. Maybe you ought to come see for yourself, he told me, leading to the doorway and led me under the crime scene tape. He explained to me that they had found no sign of forced entry and that the door and windows of the motel room had all still been locked from the inside when Pete and Vance showed up. I took a look around, feeling a shiver run through my body. There was fresh blood splattered around the room, on the walls, on the floor, the bed, even the ceiling. The blood-stained bed sheets had been ripped away from the mattress, as if somebody had desperately tried holding onto them as they were pulled out of the bed. There were 10 very thin trails of blood on the carpet leading away from the bed. 10 thin trails of blood that had been made by 10 desperate, terrified fingers clawing for purchase of the owner who was dragged away. I followed the bloody finger marks across the floor away from the bed to where they ended. They ended at the closet. I looked at them. I looked at the chief, and he looked back at me. His face was hard and impassive, but fear gleaming in his eyes. I approached the closet. The door was standing open. I stood there looking for some time. The closet was empty, completely empty. There wasn't even blood on the floor in the closet. They never found Mrs. Garrity.
It's a very scary situation.
Yeah, I was having a hard time. Had a couple words mixed up there, but yeah, I was so into it. I was having a hard time reading it. That's terrifying. So he thinks, hey, we're going to get this lady help tomorrow. I got her somewhere safe for the night. Like everything's better.
Yeah. And then all that. And it's a, nightmarish scene that he's describing. And a scene that, you could, when you start to think about it, like how horrible was this attack on this?
Yeah.
The blood went that way. It went all these directions. And the clawing of her fingers as she's being dragged, ripping off her fingernails, causing her fingernails to bleed. That's just nightmarish stuff.
Yeah. It says here that there were, fresh blood splatter around the room everywhere. There were 10 very thin trails of blood on the carpet leading away from the bed. 10 thin trails of blood that had been made by 10 desperate, terrified fingers clawing for purchase as their owner was dragged away. Interesting wording there. basically saying that this person's being taken. They're fighting for their life here.
Yeah. And to end in the closets that have been the whole crux of the situation this whole time is this thing that is able to travel apparently through the closet.
They kicked in the door because it was locked.
Yeah.
They get in there, the window's locked from the inside.
Yeah.
So nothing's got into there. I mean, I guess could have locked on its way out, but it really appears as if the door was not broken down until they did it.
Yeah.
I mean, all things that indicate she should still be in there.
Yeah, which makes the whole thing seem supernatural in nature.
Which, well, they didn't know what they were walking into because the neighboring motel room said that there was crazy, violent sounds coming from there.
Yeah.
Like of a struggle. So they're getting a call to this, and I can't even imagine what they're thinking when they go to there, you know? I wonder if they knew she was there, you know? I don't know.
Like if they knew that was the same room.
Yeah.
It's possible. It would seem like that would be logged somewhere, but maybe not those two guys. They might not have realized.
Yeah, I mean afterwards, obviously, but I wonder if they realized in the moment. But I just can't imagine. It's locked. They got to break in, and then she's just gone.
Yeah, in such a terrifyingly violent way.
Yeah. What? Absolutely crazy story.
Yeah,
it's this guy goes to work every day, and this small town, and not much happens. Then you have something like this happen.
Yeah. It is definitely one of the more gruesome stories that I think we've read. We've read a few that were, pretty gruesome, but this one,
it's gruesome, but there's no body. There's no.
Yeah, it's just a
scene.
Very horrifying ending. And yeah, I was reading that. I was like, man, this is intense. Like this is the scariest thing I've ever seen, read. And I was thinking about it, actually. I was thinking, these people, like you said, they had a normal day. This is not, something they would encounter. And this makes you question everything you think of in life when it comes to the supernatural. If something like this was to happen to you, this would be something that would like totally turn your world on its end. And you would never stop questioning it. You'd always be like, how'd that happen? What was that?
They were going to get her help. There just wasn't enough time in the day,
Yeah.
They ran out of time for the day. I mean.
Yeah. And, that kind of thing takes time to set up. So they were probably planning on keeping her in that hotel for a couple of days.
Well, said the next morning they were going to go talk to her family.
Yeah.
So work in progress trying to get that done. Somebody's asking, I wonder if they ever sent a priest to the house. I don't know. I don't know. But here's my thing. When they said that, I didn't get the impression that they were actually actually going to do that. They're just saying that to her so she wouldn't worry about the house.
Yeah, they were basically placating her. They didn't want her to know, in fact, that they were planning on trying to get her institutionalized, because that's not something you normally say to someone right out the pocket like that. You need to break it to them like this is for the best. So them saying something to comfort her about like, hey, we're gonna take care of it all, is one way of doing things. It's maybe not the best way, like there's something to be said for giving someone false hope in a situation, but it's probably the best idea. Who knows?
How do you, but how do you handle a situation like that? You just try to comfort the person. And that's what they did. I mean,
yeah, it's a really difficult question, and morally, yeah, it makes most sense to try to comfort her.
I imagine going to work after this.
Yeah, like this was so he woke up at 4 a.m. He hasn't started his shift yet. He's got a whole day ahead of him of thinking about this.
Yeah,
while at work. I can't imagine he got much work done that day.
Does have another crazy story with this. Goes along with this police officer. So maybe one day we can get to that. But
that'd be nice.
It happened years after this. More recently. I think he quotes it as he has two things that have happened now that he can't really
Explain.
Yeah, wrap his head around. Mrs. Garrity, man, she may have been right all along.
Could have been.
Are you still not writing off the dementia or something? Or
I believe that it could have been anything. It could have been a person that had snuck in somehow. I don't know how they got her out. If they killed her there, I don't know why they would. But a person could hide in people's houses. They could get. We've seen and read stories about that, and then could have been terrorizing her and then end up killing her. It could have been something supernatural, something that actually did travel between the closets. She was clearly in a slightly dementia state. Wasn't dementia yet, but she was starting to lose some of her faculties. She was doing some crazy stuff.
Someone's asking if they killed her, took her out of the room. How would they be able to relock the door from the inside? Maybe locked it, then walked out and shut it. I don't know.
Yeah, so I've stayed in a few motels where the doors do auto lock a lot of times when they close it. It depends on whether or not they meant the slide like deadbolt was also thrown. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question. But they do lock a lot of times automatically. I don't know if that's what happened.
It's just weird that it leads right up to the closet, but there's nothing in the closet.
Yeah, that makes it seem something else.
It's not like and they had to break into there, so that being the motel room. So
yeah, it's very crazy.
Story that will make you lie there at night and wonder what happened.
Yeah, I'm sure he did for many nights afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't even imagine. Wow. You have anything else on this story? This is a really good one.
This was I really enjoyed this. I like these long ones where we can trade off as much. I do like the other ones too a lot, but I really like these because it gives you an opportunity to experience the story from. We can each experience it from the other one telling the story at the same time. We each hear your take and my take on it, and I like that way of doing it. So this was a fun thing to do. This was one of those stories that I think it could be a legitimate horror movie. If someone wanted to make a good little horror movie, this would be a story to do it with. Besides that, this was crazy. I really enjoyed reading it. Well, I mean, enjoyed in the sense that it was interesting to read. Never enjoy hearing someone getting murdered.
We assume, we don't know, I guess.
Yeah. So but it was a good, really good story.
I agree. Let's share a clip and come back with the end of the episode. Share our plugs, where to find us, and all that. Let's find a clip to watch.
Armed and ready, sir. I'm Packer.
Who is that guy? Put him on speaker.
Pilot, identify yourself.
It's me, Russell Case, sir. I told you I wouldn't let you down. Just keep those guys off me for a few more seconds, will ya?
All right, boys. Let's give Mr. Case some cover.
I've got tone. Eagle 20. Box 2. It's jammed. It won't fire. Do me a favor. Tell my children I love them very much. All right, you alien in the words of my generation, up yours! Oh, boys! I'm back!
Oh, boy. So, that goes with the fact she mentioned she saw UFOs.
Well, no, what goes with the fact everybody thought he was crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if have you ever seen the alternate scene there?
No.
So they have another scene that they were going to use originally where he was not allowed to be a jet fighter pilot. And so he shows up in his crop duster with the bomb strapped to his crop duster to fly it up into it.
Wow.
Yeah. I saw that scene like years and years ago on like some special features on one of those limited releases of the movie.
Yeah, I got to find that. So yeah, everybody thought he was crazy when he said he had been kidnapped by aliens.
Yeah, he was right.
Yeah, he was right about I don't know if he was really kidnapped, but he was right about them coming.
You know what's funny is like I think his kids still hated him for saying there was aliens after the fact that there was aliens. Like they still made fun of him or something like that. It's been a while since I watched that movie.
Yeah, I don't know if they made fun of him. They just tried to avoid it, I think.
Yeah.
Because everybody else made fun of him. They were definitely proud of him there at the end, though.
Yeah.
If you had to save the world, would you want to go out like that?
I mean, if I had to go out while doing it, then yes.
What would you say? Would you say I'm back?
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah.
What an amazing scene.
Yeah. You should definitely see the other one. It's weird. It's really weird because like that crop duster's going the same speed as those jets. I think that's why they cut it, because they're like, no, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Him out there flying the dust cropter with fighter jets everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good movie though. Will Smith does a great job in that movie too, doesn't he?
He actually does. I like him in that. And Jeff Goldblum.
I also love the doctor. Remember when the Area 51? There's that really awkward doctor.
Oh yeah.
He just kept saying really inappropriate things. He didn't know were inappropriate. He
Yeah.
didn't let us out of here much, but he was like, "It's so cool, isn't it?" He's like, "So cool." The president's like, "So cool. All these people died." He's like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah. And then he gets like possessed by the alien at some point.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Great movie. Let's hit the plugs. Get this stream done. YourScaryStories.com. If you've got a story that you want to share, submit it there. Or you can find us on social media. I'm at podcast, like everything. Luke's got his tag there. Luke is in charge of the Discord and helps out with the Reddit. The Reddit is Share Your Scary Stories, and the Discord is
Your Scary Stories.
Yep. Facebook, Your Scary Stories. Twitter, I think if you search Your Scary Stories, you'll find it, but I think it might be under a different name. But we're not very active on the Twitter. We got to get better on some of these social media pages.
Yeah, I need to get better at it, but I'm getting there slowly.
Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have a story, or you let us know if you had something that happened to you that you want shared. We can do that. You can state your name. You can remain anonymous and all that great stuff. This is another fun one, though, dude.
Oh, yeah. It's always fun.
I agree. And we'll be back at it next week, Monday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern-ish. That's our goal.
Yep.
So until then, keep being you and keep being great.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?